Hello, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another live episode of Women Unleashed. Today we are going to be tackling how to feel good in your own skin and show up authentically. I have a guest, a beautiful, beautiful human being, and she's streaming all the way from Colorado, Christina Smith. But before I do bring her out, I wanted to just invoke a mind that's open, a heart that's open, a state that we are receiving messages and downloads um, from one another, because the idea of Women Unleashed has always been so that we create transformation now instantaneously and bring about that transformation not just in our communities and in our lifetime now, but create a legacy of our own so that we affect people, our children, our grandchildren in the future. It's always been about intergenerational transformation. Women Unleashed is a collective of women sharing stories together, sharing gifts together, and sharing with you the journey of the beautiful journey of trusting yourself, whatever that looks like, whatever that feels like at the time. And so I've been really, really privileged to have gathered a collective of women who are, empowered and called to share their stories and their gifts with us. Now, without further ado, I want to bring out and introduce Christina Smith is a life coach and an author, and she helps women how to really show up authentically and to stop just surviving, but get into the rhythm of thriving and to really feel good in your own skin. And what does that even mean? For many of us, we have forgotten because we are so busy thinking about getting by, thinking about how do I survive, thinking about what is the little next best thing instead of seeing the whole entire big picture of what can really be possible. So I'm going to bring out Christina. Good morning, my love. How are you? Well, good afternoon
Good
for you.
afternoon for me. Yes, it is a beautiful day here in Colorado too. Thank you so much for having me on this live episode so that we could discuss this because I love this stuff. It's so juicy.
Yes, juicy is indeed the word. It's almost like when I'm here on Women Unleashed, I have to be mindful because I can stay here for hours just talking about this stuff with every woman. So, Christina, I know that there was an event in your life before you became a coach that led you to look into your own life deeper on how you can stop the surviving mode and really create a life that you desire and teach others. And I believe that was what you felt ill. Now, before I ask you about your story, I wanted to speak to that because it's a direct lived experience that I've had.
Mm.
Is that there is a concept about the feather, the brick in the truck that I always touch upon when I talk about surviving versus thriving, because I know you speak about a life that looks good on paper as well, which many women tend to live. And
Mm.
for me, it was true. For many women that I help, it was true and can still be true that we live a life that looks really successful on the outside, but we do have unaddressed issues, unaddressed pain, unaddressed experiences that we haven't come, full circle on. And so I guess I would love for you to take us into the experience of that catalyst and exactly
Mm.
what were you running from? What were you trying to survive from that led you into that illness and that state of depression?
I love this, and it's such a multifaceted question because I love how you describe surviving. Because I always say that surviving is running away from something, trying to avoid something, and thriving is running towards something. And those are two completely different things that have completely different energies. And if you are used to one, the other one is going to be so hard, whichever one you're used to. So for me, there was a lot of traumatic events that happened when I was younger. And I was raised by a single mother for most of my childhood, and everything was busy. There was no time to really discuss or emotionally unpack all of this stuff. Emotions weren't something we talked about, right? And so I didn't really deal with it. I just thought I just had to keep moving forward. And so that's what I did until my 30s. I was moving forward. I went through a traumatic divorce that was really, really awful in my early 30s. And I was really angry by my mid 30s. And then I survived so well that I got into a second marriage that is still going very beautifully. My son had a nice solid home that we could raise him in. I had a great job that I actually was not bad. The people I worked with were great. And there was 3 actual events that happened probably about 6 months with each other that I was like, this is really telling me something. And the first one was that I got really sick. Now, I had been sick before. And what happens in our body is if we ignore the signs and the symptoms of what's going on, our body's trying to tell us something. And if we ignore them, right? Or like I did in my 20s when I used to get migraines, I got a pill for that, right? And then my joints hurt phenomenally in my late 20s and I got a pill for that. And then I had stomach issues and they couldn't figure out what that was. So in my mid 30s, I was going to the hospital like every 3 or 4 months. It was really awful. It would take me months to recover and it was miserable. And even when I started getting that I'm under control and when I wasn't in pain, I was crying on the way to work. And I couldn't figure this out because I was like, I have this good on paper life, right? Like I'm getting a good salary. I have a healthy child. We're all safe. I have a great husband. Like I kept telling myself I should just be grateful, right? Because a lot of people have that gratitude thing where it's just like they kind of smother it over everything and try to mask everything else that's going on. And that's what I did. And then one day, my son had been in therapy because his dad had moved away and we just wanted to make sure that he was solid. And the therapist came to me and said, "Hey, Christina, maybe you should get a counselor." And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. But we don't always do for ourselves, do we? And then a few weeks later, she said, "Hey, did you get a counseling appointment yet?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Well, you know what?" And this is what really broke me was, "Your son will be okay when you're okay." And I was, first thought that came to my mind was, I'm screwing everything up. All the trauma that I had when I was a child, I'm putting it on my son. And I saw that generational, flow that you talk about, breaking that cycle. And then surely I went to a counselor the next week and it was like, because it was for my son, right? And that just showed you where I was. As long as it was for someone else, I would do it. If it was for me, I wouldn't, because that's not part of survival. And I had gotten really, really good at survival. I had ignored all the emotional and mental trauma I went through as a child. And the physical and the sexual abuse, like all of that. Even my counselor was talking about it, like, well, what about this sexual abuse when you were young? And I was like, oh no, that's fine. I figured that out. It's fine. I'm past that, like I didn't have to work on it. But there was this thing in survival that doesn't give you time to really look at things. We can get really good at surviving because it keeps us busy. There's always something else to be doing. There's always something else. And so for me, an addiction that I got was a work addiction because I felt really good at work, right? There was stuff to get done. I could do it. I could, there was a paycheck at the end. So it was like there was all these little steps that seemed so perfect. But again, I was crying on the way to work and I was really, really sick. So something was really, really wrong. And what I realized is all the trauma that I had been through, all the survival that I had been through was preventing me from thriving. So yes, I had this great life, but it didn't even feel like mine. Like it didn't feel real. And one of the first questions that my counselor asked me was, "What is it that you want?" And I was like, "What does that mean? What do you mean? What do I want?" I want to be happy, right? Isn't that our answer? I want to be happy. I just want to feel happy. They're like, well, you can get there, but you're going to have to go back to this trauma that you experienced, even if you think that there's nothing available, nothing to gain from it. I promise you there was. And after a couple of years, I realized, wow, how much that trauma had been preventing me from really thriving, because there was a piece of me that didn't think I was worthy of thriving, that thought it should have to be harder, right? That there should be like work to it. And thriving is almost like, it's ironic because it's harder for people often. However, there's a lot less to do. And I think that's what really throws people off, is that when we're thriving, we're not striving to be perfect. We're enjoying who we are in the moment. So that was the thing that really started turning things around for me, is I started opening up my mind to, what if there was another way to live? Like, what if I'm actually preventing this life that I am so jealous that other people have? What if I'm making it harder because I'm so used to surviving that I'm throwing in all kinds of drama and I'm making it really hard? And I'm not listening to my inner wisdom, because as much as, it was a really solid job with good people that, to work with, my husband still works at that company because they're really good people. It was, what I was doing had no value to me. It just felt like I was dredging up work to do every day, and I hated it. I hated marketing software. That was just me. I hated it. And I just didn't know that there was another way, because when I was growing up, it was college and then your good job, right? There was like nothing after that. That was supposed to be settled. You were supposed to stay at a good company if they were treating you well and they were paying you well, right? And so for me, it really had me having to re-question, what are my core beliefs? Is there other options for me? What would I do if I could do anything? And it certainly didn't. I mean, it now turned out to be a life coach and an author, but back then it was it would have seemed outrageous to go work on my own. In fact, like even 5 years after I became a coach, my mom was still asking me, don't you need a job? Do you need help looking for a job? And I was like, I have a job. But because, she had come from worker bees that had jobs, she just assumed that working for myself wasn't going to work out and she needed to protect me. But that's really what it was. I had to have this whole shift of like, hold on, now that I've survived all this, now that I'm on dry land and I can stand on my own 2 feet, what is it that I really wanted? And I had to start looking outside the box. So the first thing I did, and I don't mean to go on and on, but the first thing I did was go to health coaching school, because I wanted to figure out what was going on with my health. And although diet and exercise and all that kind of helped, what I realized is it was the stress and the inner conflict that was going on every day, because I was trying to earn my worth. That's what survivors are really good at. We're really good at being like, maybe if I do enough things for you, this can create a safe space for us, a connection. If I do enough stuff, I'm a good enough person. And that's not really what thriving is. So I had to start leaning into the discomfort of, who am I? What is it that I want? And how do I move forward? Yeah.
Mm. Wow. What an important conversation to be had, and I really appreciate you for bringing that up, because I feel like, Christina, we can spend the next 30 years um, having to repattern the old paradigm that we've been brought into 100 years ago. You mentioned, we are so the life model, especially for those who are born in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s, probably even early 90s, is that you're born, you go to school, you get a degree or something equivalent to, you find a job that will pay you a regular salary, and then you stick to that job, and then you do the thing where you might find a family, raise a family if you want, and then you retire and then you're done. It is
Mm-hmm.
such an old school, and it's not. And you mentioned this very very briefly about who am I really, and what do I really want? Because what happens is when we are born into that programming, and many of us listening here right now have been born into that conditioning, is that we lose the sense of who I am very early on. Because at the age of 3 or 4, we are thrown into kindergarten where it's all about mathematics and science and English, and then we get into the calculus and trigonometry in university. So it's everything that we feed our minds is borrowed
Mm-hmm.
or inherited or pumped into us, and so we lose the essence that we are born with. And so we find ourselves in these situations in many different variations. With yourself, it was about, okay, you went into the health coach inquisition, and even though diet and exercise is most important, yes, absolutely, but um, I just want to briefly speak to that. Is a lot of women do yo-yo fashion dieting, this one, that one, that one, that one, and they wonder why nothing works. It's because it's addressing it, you talked about, it's really about the stress, the adrenals inside of you, the conflict. You mentioned about you were so angry. My goodness, that is probably the most unspoken addiction that women and men have, is because we get into our bodies. Dr. Deepak Chopra talks about when we feel into an emotion, and when we start using that emotion to survive and address things in our life, our system becomes addicted to that type of emotion, so that when we don't use that, our bodies literally look for that. And so it becomes instantaneous, that when we are faced with something, we look for that emotion and use that. And in my case, before I started healing, is that I would go straight into the anger mode, because it's how I survived. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it was like I was addicted to it. And I love how you bring those things up, because it's okay to talk about how do we get confident in our skin and show up authentically. But it's great concept, but it's important for us to go into the nitty gritty of it. What does that really? What is doing the work really
Mm-hmm.
look like? And I feel that there's an importance as well when you were talking about, a friend of yours said, "Hey, did you get a counseling session?" And you were like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah," until it was pointed out that it really, even if not for you, for your loved ones, it's it's a scary thing to do for many people. But I must say that being able to at least honor, in the programs that I run for my students, I call it an honoring of your story. It's like coming out from the victim mode to the victress, or the creatrix, or the victor. And that's part of the work, right? It always has to
Mm-hmm.
start with honoring it, acknowledging it, being brave enough and courageous enough to say that, hey, it happened. And it's something that I've never talked about, and perhaps maybe for once, let's just tackle it and move on. Because if you keep running away from it, then that's the surviving part. You're always running away instead of
Yeah.
walking gracefully towards. Christina,
Yeah.
I would love for you to share with us. Many, many listeners right now are resonating in different variations in their life. Like, that sounds like me. How do we begin to shift from the paradigm of surviving to opening up to the full potential that is literally in the palm of our hands?
Yeah. So the first thing is to finally admit that we're creating a lot of this. I love a lot of what you just said. I read this meme the other day that said, blame is great for your ego, responsibility is great for your future. And I was like, yes, that's it. Because even in my 30s, I could have still been blaming my parents for the trauma I went through as a child. And at some point, I had to realize, hold on now. You are a whole adult person now. You get to choose how that trauma displays in me or not, right? I get to choose that. And I love this part where you said we can become addicted to an emotion, because I feel like I was addicted to surviving. I had become the girl who could survive anything, who could overcome, who could was so resilient. And let me tell you, when I hear that word resilient, sometimes I think it's great, but other times I'm just like, I'm so tired of being resilient. But what happens is we get like addicted to this survival. And so we start seeing things to overcome everywhere. Everything needs to be overcome. So survivalists as thrivalists are usually perfectionists. Like
Mm,
they're not really thriving. They think that if I just make everything pretty enough, and if everything just falls into line enough, someday I'm going to have a switch that just automatically happens and I'm going to feel great about my life. I'm going to feel like everybody's Instagram stories, right? Like that's what life is going to be like. And that's not it. Most of the change between that addiction to survival and really turning to thrival is a lot of work. And so you've asked, what is this work? This work is starting to understand a little bit of what you said before. What is it that I've learned is just the next right step, the next right step, the next thing that everybody wants me to do versus really, who am I? What really lights me up? What's really exciting about me, right? What's really exciting about my prospects? That part is easy. The harder part is starting to witness the patterns in which we have this addiction to survival or anger or grief or wherever our sweet spot was, right? Wherever we got rewarded for my resiliency, right? Like, because people rewarded me for my resiliency, what do I need? I need more things to be resilient against. So, this is a whole mind shift of going, where am I making these things up? Where am I just getting angry because it feels comfortable and easy rather than saying, okay, what is it I need to do about this? Is there anything I can do about this? Is this something that I just need to accept? Because I think anger is often just us wishing the world was different than it is, right? That's really where we come down to with anger, is it just isn't showing up the way I want it to. And, this is something we can get used to. Yeah, it's never going to show up the way I want to, right? Maybe not never, but it's often not going to show up exactly how I want to. And so, how am I going to deal with that? Am I going to become like that wise elder who can manage these things? Or am I going to fall into that emotional trap every time that, I go to the restaurant, they're out of my favorite meal. Am I going to get angry about that, or am I going to try something different? Now, we laugh about that, but there was a time in my life where if I got the wrong order in fast food, I would be fuming angry. Like it was the end of the world, right? And it just seemed like every day there was these end of the world things that I was just like I was giving, what a mentor of mine used to say is, you're giving a $10,000 answer to a $10 question, or to a $10 problem is what's happening. And I had to start realizing, why am I doing that? Because my life was no longer needed to be in survival mode, but I didn't know how to react to life without going to those extreme emotions and getting that I can do it kind of attitude, right? Like put your big girl pants on and just get up and go do it and crush it and do, like all of that, although it benefited me in many years, that's part of why I got so sick, because I kept making everything so hard. And the crazy thing is, thriving, if we can get comfortable with fear and the discomfort of being human, thriving is like 1,000 times easier than surviving, 1,000 times easier than surviving, because we have to do so much less and there's no emergency or urgency. However, it's also the hardest of us to step into because we don't need it. there's no urgency, right? There's no emergency or importance to it, unless we give it value and we give it urgency and we give it importance. And that's what I started to have to do. And one of the biggest keys that I would say, listen to me, people, I'm going to say it several times, I'm sure, but discomfort. Discomfort is not our enemy. Discomfort is where growth lives. Discomfort is where our emotional stability lives. Um, we need to get used to discomfort. And I know, especially in my culture of the US, it's all about we want things to be easy and comfortable, and everything should be, smooth, right? That's the ideal, is that there would be no friction in our lives. And that's just crazy because we live with, millions of other people. And so there's always going to be discomfort in life. It's how we start to step into it. And so one of the questions I always ask my clients is this unsafe or is it uncomfortable? Because unsafe, we should deal with, right? That needs to be dealt with if something's unsafe. If it's just uncomfortable, feels unsafe to our ego, maybe. But if it's just uncomfortable, then we get to decide, how bad is it? I want that thing that's on the other side of this discomfort. And really, how much is that discomfort going to hurt me? Because I think that our brains make up fear to be like these big things. And really, most of our fears come down to, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to have to start over. I don't want to fail. I don't want other people to see me fail. These are not things that are bad. Like, failure is good, right? Wasn't it Edison or somebody who said, like, every time I try one thing and it doesn't work, it just means that it's not that way. I've crossed something off my list. That's not going to work, right? And we
Yeah.
can just keep moving on. And instead, we just make it like every decision I make today is going to have this huge impact, or something bad's going to happen. We get to choose what's bad. Um, so, yeah, really leaning into discomfort, I think, is one of the biggest tips I can offer to anyone. One of my favorite authors, Dr. Susan David, she wrote a book called Emotional Agility. And she writes that discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life. So if you want your life to be meaningful, and I have every woman in the world telling me, I want more purpose, I want to have meaning in my life, well, discomfort is going to come along with you. So it's about getting used to that discomfort so that it's no longer uncomfortable. Like, discomfort is like, now I see it and I'm just like, oops, yep, here's that growth moment.
Mm.
And
I
then I
love
can,
that. Yeah.
here's where I'm going to grow. Like, if
So,
something's really
can we just
uncomfortable, it's
give
just
credit
growth.
to that author again that said discomfort is the admission to a meaningful life? Who said
Yeah.
it?
Dr. Susan David.
Yeah, yeah. So we
Yeah.
just, I love. I mean, please write it down for everyone who's listening. Discomfort is the admission to a meaningful life. There's so I cannot, you're preaching to the choir here. It's just so, so, so true. But I want to just first of all honor what you said, that the very first step that you did back then was to admit that, hang on, I'm an adult here. And yes, I can go on to blame other people, my parents, or whoever,
My
did.
ex-husband, whoever.
Yeah. But you are a whole adult self who has a choice. You are a sovereign being.
Hmm.
And so when you take responsibility for your life, then enter the position of thriving, and you're leaving the gates of surviving. That's just, it's the first, it's the key to the gate, is to start to
Mhm.
think, I am a whole person. I am not broken. I am not incomplete. I am a whole person. I have full sovereignty. I can choose. I can choose. I can choose. I can release them. It's just so, so fundamental. And
Yeah,
even with
like,
just those two things,
mhm.
admission, admitting your own accountability for your life, and then getting really familiar with discomfort. It's like I once heard someone, I cannot remember who they are, Um, it's they said I'm so freaking uncomfortable right now. It's great. Because, and to me, that's true. The more I get nervous, which is the same as excited, it means that there is a project or something that I'm endeavoring to do or doing that's really making me think more, be more, and just sink deeper into my own true self, which is
Mm.
not comfortable. And I always, often, I love to just, well, go back to practical things that we can compare. You talked about unsafe and uncomfortable. Is it
Mm.
unsafe or uncomfortable? Take, for instance, a woman giving birth. For those of you who are moms, you're pushing the baby out, but you never once. It's not the most pleasant experience, to say the least. But
It's even painful. I mean, well, let's give it painful, but is it unsafe?
mm,
Right.
but we, because we know that millions of gazillions of women have done it before, we know it's not unsafe. We know it's only uncomfortable, and so we're okay with it, and we
Yeah.
do it. It's the same with, and it's so just to make it really tangible for those who are listening. When it comes to embracing discomfort as a key to a meaningful life, with physical health, for example, if you were one to radically change a chronic pain or a chronic condition or whatever, or a lifestyle, there has to be a stage where you got to get comfortable with, say, a 4 month or a 6 month phase where you're changing the way that you eat, the way that you sleep, the way that you look at your lifestyle, the way that you have a relationship with sugar, with carbohydrates, with all of these things. It's not unsafe, but it's freaking uncomfortable.
It is. It is. And actually, my book is called Inviting Shift. And that is the 5 stages of shift. And shift is actually an acronym for the 5 different stages. And the worst part, the part that everybody gives up on is the F stage, appropriately named, right? It's the fear or fortitude stage. It's after we have the aha and we're like, I know I'm not supposed to eat sugar. And all of a sudden we think, oh, yeah, I've solved it. No problem. I'm just not going to eat sugar, right? But then the F stage comes and it's the fear or the fortitude. You're either going to stick with this new thought of like, yeah, sugar really isn't benefiting me. I'm either gaining weight or I'm feeling icky and, all that other stuff that goes with it. But we have to make that choice, right? Because we've had these habits, whether that habit is being anxious, addicted to surviving, addicted to anger, whatever that is, we have to start interrupting that pattern and doing something really uncomfortable, which is something new. And so we either have the fortitude to keep moving forward and noticing, like, yeah, I am starting to feel better because I'm not eating sugar. Yeah, that's really great. Right. But at first, we're not going to see those changes. And we have to kind of go with trust that if I don't get angry enough, or trust that if I lean into thriving, even though it's supposed to be the best thing, can be really uncomfortable. Right. Anything that we've never done before can be really, really uncomfortable. And so surviving that F stage is all about really sticking to your guns in some way or another. Now, some people white knuckle it, right? And they kind of just like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to eat the sugar, right? But they think about the sugar all day long. But there's other less painful ways to do it, right? There's, instead of just cutting out all the sugar, there's a way to like reduce it over time by crowding it out with better choices, right? And that's usually where I lean, whether it's food or internally conflicts, whatever's going on. I like to crowd out the bad behaviors because then they don't feel so white knuckly. And I just believe that like when we white knuckle through things, all we're doing is thinking about the next time we can have them. So if I say that I can't have sugar except on my birthday, I'm like sitting here going, I can't wait 3 months, and I can have sugar. And now my head's like still at sugar. So we're still focused on the wrong thing. So, what we want to do is keep our brain with, where is it that I want to be? How is it that I want to feel? Rather than getting stuck in these, oh, if I do that, that's going to be crazy. And it's really about, I hate when I say this word, reframing, because it sounds so generic. But just like you were saying before, right? When you get nervous, oh, that's also excitement. So many of us, I hear it all day long. I've even said it myself. We talk about anxiety. In the body, we can feel our feelings show up as sensations, right? That's how they show up. I know I'm happy because I want to laugh and, my eyes get happy. And I know I'm sad because I want to get small. I know I'm angry because I'm like raging. So they come in feelings in our body. And they're no different than if we're hungry or thirsty. Those are feelings as well. It's just that we know how to solve those feelings. When it comes to anger and sadness and surviving, nobody ever actually discussed that with most of us. Some people did have great parents that talked about emotions, not mine. But we just need to normalize them. I think that there's something in normalizing discomfort, normalizing anger. Normalized anxiety is excitement. It feels the same in our body. The only difference is the thoughts and stories that we give to it. We call it anxiety if we're really focused on the negative aspects of something, what could go wrong, how it could fail us, right? We call it excitement when it's something that when we're focused on the fun part of it, right? The reward behind it, the thrill of it. So, but they're like the same feelings. It's not about the feeling, it's about the story that we're giving it. And that's really what it comes down to with discomfort. If we were like animals and they normalize, most animals normalize their pain. Like you don't see an animal really screaming out when they're giving labor because they're like, this is normal. I know it's uncomfortable, but this is just normal, right? That's animals kind of see it that way. They're not making up stories about it, how it should be easier, it should be different, it should be, it should be. It's all those should be's that are making it super, super uncomfortable. So instead of, and this is really where my therapist went to, was like, instead of asking ourselves what it should be, why don't we ask ourselves what it could be? Like, what do we want it to be? How could we have it? Because if we're focused, I really believe that whatever we focus on grows. And if we are so focused in on the problem, we're going to see more problems. But if we are so focused in on what it is that we actually want, we actually get more of what we want. And that's a hard thing for women to give themselves permission to do. And so that's the number one thing, is we have to start giving ourselves permission to enjoy things. We have to start giving ourselves permission to believe that we're worthy of doing good things for ourselves, not just others, right? Of going to therapy because we know we're messed up in the brain, not because it's impacting other people. Although I think that that's a really great, if that's what you need to get there, like me, right? If that's what you need, is to do it for someone else at first. I mean, it ended up, of course, I was not doing it for my son. I was doing it for me in the end. But the changes that I've made have impacted my son, right? They've impacted him in a different way. I react to him differently than generations before reacted to their children. I teach him more about emotions and how we think in perspectives and than my parents did, because they didn't know, right? And so I can blame my mom for all this trauma. But lately, people have been like, well, you're so intuitive. You can really see what's going on. You can really see the big picture and things and the patterns. And I'm like, yeah, you know how I got there? Trauma. Trauma is how I got there. I was a super sensitive kid that needed to know what was going on with everybody at one time because I needed to know what was safe and not safe at that moment. So, I mean, I can also embrace that some of the really horrible things in my life also led to me having a really great life. That is part of my authenticity as a coach, is that I can bring that trauma response as a gift. It's part of my magic now. So I claim it as something good. I no longer have to blame anybody for that. I can honor myself for honing it into a gift rather than the way that it wasn't serving me before.
Beautiful, Christina. I know you are also really, really passionate about helping women to get unstuck and stop feeling guilty. And I feel that that's a really, really big part of showing up authentically. So
Mm,
I would love to ask you is being authentic as a woman, it can feel very scary to do so because you have to be vulnerable and be yourself. So, how can we
mm,
show up embodying our full personal potential without feeling like we are so exposed and
mm,
emotionally naked and vulnerable? How do we
mm,
marry up the two so we can be authentic in our lives?
mhm. Well, two things are coming to mind. Authenticity doesn't necessarily mean I'm an open book, look at every crevice and corner of me. Authenticity is how we intentionally show up. So, I did the desire map for a long time as a facilitator. And so the idea behind the desire map is how do I want to feel? Right. And that's what we aim at. Right. Vision boards kind of do the same thing. You know, you put all this stuff on a vision board, but what the desire map says is, why do you want that stuff? What's the feeling that you think you're going to get when you have that stuff so that you can bring that into everyday life? And that's kind of how I set my intentions. I believe intentions are much different than goals. So my intentions, I think currently my intentions are bold and brave, divine trust, and sacred body. So that I remember to take care of myself, right? And I can really know that I'm not dependent on everything the divine is, right? And I'm just kind of here as a vessel, and also to remind myself to be bold and brave, right? But that's how I want to show up, bold and brave. And so whenever I make decisions, I go by my intentions. If those are my intentions, what's the decision here? If those are my intentions, right? Because it goes back to what I truly, truly want. It's a true marker as to what is right and what is wrong for me. So often the work is changing the actions and the ways of being that are out of alignment with that. So anything that does not align with me having divine trust, being bold and brave, or being sacred about my body, if they don't align with that, they don't fit for me anymore. I have to say no. Now, does that stink? Yeah. There's a lot of things that are outside that category, but that helps me really understand that this is what's aligned with what I want. If I truly want to feel this way, I'm going to have to say no to these things that don't feel good. I'm going to have to say no to eating 12 cupcakes at bedtime, right? Because that's not treating my body in a sacred way, right? If I have the choice to go walking at lunchtime rather than just sitting and, taking a nap or doing something else, I know in my body, sacred body, I know that walking is going to be more helpful. So I get to make that choice. So it's really aligning with what we want. What is it that we actually want? So we have to do that. The other thing is the question I have in my program is basically the whole 9 modules of my signature program is all about how do you want to show up? You get to decide. So it could be the same intentions, right? Bold and brave, divine trust, sacred body. That's how I want to show up. Now, if I show up that way, I don't care what anybody else thinks. It's not my job to worry about what they think. It's my job to show up in the authentic light that feels good to me. And authentically to me is being bold and brave. That might piss somebody off. Some people don't like other people getting spotlight. We have a phrase called kill the queen, right? When we're in immature sovereign kind of archetype, what happens is the one person who's shining, we all want to bring down, right? It's why women don't trust each other so much, because we want to judge that woman who's being so bold and brave or being so big. And so that's a behavior that, I had to, like, if I'm going to be bold and brave, I might be angering some of these people. It doesn't matter, because I only have to please me and how I like to show up. And what happens when we do that is, one, all the masks come off. And I don't know about you, Grace, but I know for me, I can tell when someone's wearing a mask and it doesn't feel good. It feels shady and manipulative. And I'm wondering, why is it that they can't be who they want to be right now? Like, why is it that they're showing up a little bit shady, a little bit, off? Like, there's just something that doesn't feel right. And so when we take those masks off, your authenticity is where it really what connects to people. That's what I've learned. Um, I've also learned that I have to learn to live for me. I am never going to be able to guess what other people want me to do, right? Because it's really just a projection of my own judgments. I'm not going to be able to guess what you need or want me to do. And so, me making up ideas of what I have to do in order to, like, that's so much work. Isn't it so much work? Like, like just the chills of like trying to figure out what somebody else needs me to do or what I'm willing to do and how can I do that? Like, no, I'm only here to please myself. Right. And that doesn't mean that if there's a difference between intention and impact. I understand that I might show up bold and brave and I may say something that really does hurt someone else. Right. They're welcome to come up to me. I am happy to apologize for the impact that has happened to them, even though that wasn't my intention. Right. So I can still negotiate those relationships. I can still be kind and open, but at least I feel good about how I show up, right? Like, don't you hate it when you're like, nobody liked the way I showed up? Not even me. Well, shoot, I can please the one person, right? And then if anybody else who comes along, that's my tribe. If they don't like the way that I show up and that doesn't jive with them, that's not my job. My job as a human is not to get 6 billion other people to like me, right? It's about showing up in my best. And when I focus on how I want to show up, I am more aligned, I believe, with what other people actually want to see in me rather than what I project. And then I get all nervous and we don't really act authentically, right? So it's so much easier. How do you want to show up? That's the question. Show up that way. What do you need to show up that way? And, don't apologize for who you are. You can apologize for the impact that it has if it does have a negative impact on people. But I think mostly we just make up those stories. The stories that we make up in our head about what other people are going to think about us is really much more painful than what they actually would do or say.
So beautiful. I mean, it was funny when you said, "Isn't that too much work?" It's exhausting trying to. My goodness, talk about adrenal fatigue. If you and I, this is so important for a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs that are listening here who are looking for more inspiration on how to keep showing up, because consistency is not an easy thing to do when you are building your message and your business. And showing up authentically, like what Christina said, is really about your intention and not so much about what is the, how is this going to impact other people. So when your intention is focused on, this is how I want to feel, how I want to show up, and for as long as that intention is for the good of yourself and for other people, you're not intending to do things, silly things like war or anything like that. Let's
Yeah,
not
I'm
go
not trying to be selfish about it, like
there.
gather the billions all to myself
Yeah.
or anything. It's about really, truly feeling good about how you show up, right? And I don't think any of us truly feel good about showing up in a way that purposely hurts other people.
And that's the power of your truth, isn't it? When you come from a place of, this has been my lived experience, and this is what I learned from that experience, and what I want to share with you is, there is nothing more authentic than from your own lived experience and from what you've learned from it, and your intention of just sharing that. It's just it's that's the scary part, is we think that, oh, if I am vulnerable enough to share my lived experience, then we go into this, my uncle will be saying this, or my neighbor from there. The fear of judgment, the fear of not belonging, the fear of being rejected, the fear of not being loved, all this fear that have been, and which is really a part of the survival paradigm that we have been brought into. And so it's getting into the uncomfortable notion that when you are authentic and centered and true to yourself, um, it is it's like having a shower every day. You do it because for your own health and well-being. For
Mm,
it's and when you are healthy and well on a consistent basis. Let's talk about your family at home. They see you well and healthy every day. Then they embody their role model of you. Now, if you do it in your business, you're consistently authentic and showing up. That's going to have the impact and the effect that you hope to create so that you can serve others. It's really
mm.
just as simple as think about it as I'm just brushing my teeth for the second time for today, or like I'm having a shower every day. It's it really is about you, isn't it? Being authentic.
Yeah, it's about just and the confidence that we can get behind it. I believe that people who are loved by other people, 90% of it is often confidence. They believe they're lovable. They believe that what they are is worthy. And, it's not that they don't want to be connected to everyone. It's just that they know that that's impossible, right? Like that's a human. I think sometimes we create these expectations in our heads that are just otherworldly, right? Like if I'm just perfect enough, I'm not going to hurt other people and they're not going to hurt me. That's baloney. We're going to hurt other people whether we intend to or not. I could be so careful about not hurting anybody and somebody could take an offense to something, right? And we have to realize that that's really about them, right? We get to choose how we show up. They get to choose how they show up. And that's our responsibility. The man in the mirror song, like that's really it. If we all worked on our own things and I always tell my husband, you keep your eyes on your own paper, because he'll ask me about, well, what do you think about you trying this or that or the other? And I'm like, you keep your eyes on your own paper. I'll keep my eyes on my own paper. You keep your eyes on your own paper. And where those papers come together, we'll talk about that. But like I get to show up how I want to, and he gets to show up the way that he wants to. And then we don't shame each other for that, right? We support each other, that's okay, that's who you are in your authenticity, like warts and all, right? Like I get to see all of you. And there's something really precious about relationships like that. One thing I would offer to women who are feeling like their authenticity isn't appreciated or wanted is that the thing that really changed for me was I went to a weekend by Woman Within. And Woman Within is an organization. They're all over the world, and they have these experiential weekends for women. And I realized sitting in a room of 60 plus women that I would have rather been in a room with 60 plus men, because it was really, really scary. Because women in my life, I've been traumatized by a lot of women. So women in my life were scary. Um, And so what happened though is this one session, everybody basically said the thing that they don't want to share with other people. And there was something so opening about that, about the fact that every one of those 60 plus women had something that they would not want somebody else to see in their life. And so we all have those things. And if we can just start seeing each other as human rather than like these perfect robots or Stepford wives or whatever we're trying to invent, if we could just see ourselves as human and like, yeah, we all have, I don't even want to call them flaws, because I think a lot of the things that we call flaws are gifts that are being used maybe in the wrong place. Like we say being bitchy is not a gift. Being bitchy is a gift. There are times where being bitchy has really, really helped my life, right? I have other tools now that I'm older. I don't need to be that way. But if somebody is coming to carjack my car, you better believe I'm bringing out that energy, right? So there's a gift in it. It's just learning when we want to use what gifts. and how we can see them as gifts rather than that thing, that icky thing she does, right? Like, well, how is that a gift? And so, yeah, being really gentle with our humanness. That's basically my tagline, is to be gentle with your humanness because we're all of those things, and it's okay. It's okay that we don't show up perfect. We're not supposed to. That's not the end game. That's not how we win. We win by being good with who we are exactly as we are right now.
Beautiful. Yeah, we win by being good about who we are and exactly as we are right now, and looking at your flaws as your gifts. So, ladies, today, probably a journaling exercise is to write down what are the things that you feel are like your flaws or the things that you're not comfortable about yourself, and what is the gift inside of that. That would be
Mhm.
so juicy, is how we started, the word that we started with in this series today. That would be amazing if
Yeah,
you can do that, share with us as well. And
yeah.
I also feel like that was the best relationship advice for the month, when you said, Christina, about, well, you focus on your paper and I'll focus on my paper. Like showing up authentically for one another and being able to come together as fully aligned with your true self. Like, I have gotten so much out of this conversation today, and I'm sure you ladies have too. But yeah, flaws. What are my things that I perceive as flaws, and really what is the gold underneath that, and how can I use
Mhm.
this? How have I used this, and how can I amplify it so that I can go into the thriving mode instead of the
Mhm.
surviving mode?
Yeah,
Um,
how can you honor yourself for that as well? It's just to honor those gifts. Like even if today they're not showing up for as well as they used to, right? Just honor yourself. Like, wow, that was a really great survival technique that you employed. That is really beautiful. Like, look how smart you were to come up with this bitchiness so that people would stay away from you and you could protect yourself. That was really honorable.
mm, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Christina, how
having
can
me.
we? Oh, it's my pleasure. But how can we have more of you, connect with you, and get to know you even deeper?
Yeah, yeah. Well, in May and June, I have a whole load of things coming up. So please come visit me on my website, christina-smith.com. And you can find me on Instagram, Christina_Smith_XOXO. And hopefully you'll join something that we have coming up. We have challenges and we have events, and it's all kinds of exciting stuff because I'm about to launch the signature program that I've been working on for the last couple of years. That's been beta tested and everything. So I'm very, very excited to work with women so that they can be more confident in their own skin, more comfortable in their relationships, and really build that authentic confidence so that you can finally really like yourself.
Beautiful. And we will be putting those links on the comments below. Thank you, everyone, for your presence, for your energy today. We love you, and we will see you again in a new episode of Women Unleashed. In the meantime, go do that journaling exercise. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.